The stage lights glared like twin suns as Whoopi Goldberg, her posture defiant and voice trembling with unspent conviction, launched into a tirade that would irrevocably fracture her relationship with the velvet-draped sanctum of The Late Show. With Stephen Colbert, the presidential seal of comedy and commentary, now a silent witness to a tempest brewing in real time. Her words, laced with raw emotion and unfiltered anger, cut through the polished veneer of late-night banter, accusing the very industry she'd graced for decades of hypocrisy, systemic marginalization, and the egregious commodification of candy. She spoke of how networks monetize trauma, how guests are molded into headline-baiting caricatures, how the audience is held hostage by sensationalism masquerading as sincerity, and how, in her own experience, she'd been both weaponized and silenced. Accolades dangling like poisoned fruit. Applause a currency that buys conformity. Colbert, usually the barometer of composed wit, tilted uncomfortably on his stool as she leveled with him directly, her gaze intense, almost pleading. "You see it, Stephen?" she implored, voice breaking. "This place, this show, it's a microcosm of everything that's wrong with how we talk or don't talk about truth in this country." The audience hushes, frame by frame of a television moment crackling with electricity, as she details, with poignant anecdotes, the time she offered a controversial opinion on a panel, only to be drowned out by producers afraid of brand safety. The time she witnessed a co-star's heartfelt confession rewritten in editing to manufacture outrage. The time she felt her own agency slip away behind camera cut. These revelations tumble forth in a torrent. Raw, unedited, urgent. Colbert, torn between duty and empathy, attempts intervention with humor, a well-placed quip to diffuse the mounting tension. But Goldberg cuts him off mid-sentence, her voice igniting again. "Don't deflect, Stephen. I want accountability, not punchlines." The moment fractures the nightly ritual. The crew behind the scenes freeze, operators frozen at consoles, teleprompters scrolling like tombstones, and the orchestra halts mid-riff, brass notes dying in mid-air. In that charged silence, Whoopi stands vulnerable, her iconic dreadlocks haloed by stage lights, her face glistening, every quiver in her voice tracing the weight of a lifetime in show business, every nuanced inflection a testament to battles waged behind laughter. Colbert's polished countenance falters, revealing a crease of regret. The control room hums with unleashed panic, executives conferring with producers in urgent whispers. And suddenly a producer emerges via an offstage hatch, murmuring into Colbert's earpiece. Goldberg's eyes flick toward the movement. She sees the mouthpiece lean in, sees the tension in Colbert's jaw, and knows. The network has decided. She draws in a long breath, the hush stretching like elastic. Then she exhales, and with grace bordering on defiance, she says, "Well, Stephen, I guess this is it. No more room for my truth here, huh?" The words land like a gauntlet. Colbert opens his mouth once, twice, trying to speak, but the silence speaks louder. Then Goldberg turns toward the crew, toward the cameras, her silhouette etched against the velvet backdrop in a tableau that will later be dissected on every news cable. Dissected in think pieces and op-eds, she offers a sardonic, bittersweet bow, a gesture steeped in decades of showbiz ritual but now charged with subversion, and takes a deliberate step off the carpeted stage. The stage manager, gloved hand extended, hesitates, and she meets it halfway, gripping it not in surrender but in solidarity with everyone who's ever had to walk away from a gilded cage. Cameras cut to black. The orchestra exhales in collective shock. The crew scrambles. Colbert stares at the monitors where she exited, his face wrought with the weight of what just transpired. And as the network exec's voice booms via earpiece, rappy. It up run the credits. The studio holds its breath. But beyond the studio doors, a firestorm ignites across social media. Some laud her as a fearless truth-teller finally breaking free. Others condemn her as unprofessional or unstable. Hashtags pour forth. Whoopi unfiltered. Truth hurt. Late show shut down. Trending worldwide in minutes. Opinion pieces roll out. On media ethics, celebrity responsibility, the line between authenticity and performance. Meanwhile, late night, Hosts everywhere scramble to adjust their scripts, their segments, their cameras, aware that the old rules have been upended. The next morning, the talk show circuit explodes. Pundits dissect her rhetoric. Fans launch petitions demanding her reinstatement. The network releases a statement emphasizing irreconcilable differences, a commitment to respectful dialogue, but no one is quite sure what that now means. Whoopi, in the epicenter of the storm, sits alone in her dressing room, lights off, door closed, peeling off her microphone pack. She's silent for a moment, then she picks up a small photo on her dressing table. A younger her, radiant and hopeful, grinning on her first Broadway set. Then she leans forward, resolving inwardly. Everything worth saying is worth saying loudly. Outside, the sky brightens over New York City. Sirens wail in the distance, taxis blare, life as ever surges on. But for Whoopi Goldberg, a chapter has closed, edited not by a producer's hand, but by her own insistence on speaking without permission. And somewhere, out there, a new one waits to be written. In the days that followed the broadcast blackout, Whoopi Goldberg became a living symbol, not of scandal, but of schism, between the truths performers live and the truths they're permitted to voice. While across Manhattan, newsrooms, editorial boards, and entertainment insiders debated whether she had broken ranks or set the record straight, though none could agree on the cost or the courage of it. In a downtown radio station, a round table of critics tried to dissect her outburst with clinical detachment, labeling it a career suicide or a masterstroke of disruption, but none of them knew what it felt like to be cornered on a soundstage, where every light was a lie, every laugh a transaction, and every pause a loaded silence. Meanwhile, Whoopi stayed quiet, not hiding but processing. In a brownstone in Harlem surrounded by art books, incense, and reminders of a life built on saying the unsayable, she turned inward, walking slowly through memories that now sharpened. In painful clarity, the film set where she challenged a director's racist assumptions and was nearly blacklisted. The panel discussion where she defended free expression only to be branded as difficult. The dozens of whispers behind her back about being too much, too loud, too political. Words that stuck not because they were true, but because they were practiced weapons of cultural erasure. And now, as networks revised contracts and rewrote host protocols, she received a quiet knock at her door. Not from an agent or publicist, but an old friend from her early theater days, a playwright who brought with him a manuscript, raw, angry, poetic, a one-woman stage piece called Exit, laughing, clearly inspired by the fallout, and offered it to her not as an opportunity, but as a reckoning. If you say it on your feet, Whoop, they can't cut it, he told her with a gentle smile, and she wept not out of sadness but of release, of realizing someone still understood that performance was never about safety, but sacrifice. Even so, outside her brownstone, the city swirled with narratives she could not control. Reporters camped on sidewalks, tabloids screaming in block caps, former co-stars issuing statements either in support or cautious neutrality, and memes, flooding timelines, some cruel, some reverent, all turning her real moment into something performative again. It was then, in the vortex of speculation, that she received an unexpected phone call. Barbara Walters' daughter, thanking her for still being brave, recounting how her mother had admired Whoopi's refusal to make nice when nice meant fake. That call bolstered her resolve. Within a week, she sat across from Gayle King for a primetime interview, not combative, not tearful, but clear-eyed, explaining how the stage had always been her cathedral, but that she would not worship in a place that asked her to whisper. When Gayle asked if she regretted walking off, she simply replied, "No, I regret all the times I stayed seated." That line ignited the next cultural flashpoint, clipped into TikToks, quoted on protest signs, turned into wall art in classroom posters. "I regret all the times I stayed seated" became a rallying cry not just for entertainers but for whistleblowers, activists, and anyone whose voice had been buried for the sake of someone else's comfort. Her publisher, watching this unfold, called with an urgent offer to release a memoir. Whoopi declined. "I'm not a book you read, I'm a voice you hear." So instead, she began organizing Unmuted, a speaking tour that would blend performance, dialogue, and unfiltered testimony from industry survivors, blacklisted writers, actors who'd vanished after one misstep, comedians punished for crossing invisible lines. Ticket sales surged. Cities added stops. Former critics began calling it a new kind of truth-telling. In the midst of this resurgence, Colbert issued a rare personal statement. Not a PR-crafted release, but a monologue aired on The Late Show, where he looked into the camera, visibly conflicted, and said, "We weren't ready. I wasn't ready. That's on me." He didn't name her, but everyone knew. The apology, though restrained, helped thaw the frost. Goldberg, watching from home, allowed herself a brief smile, not out of satisfaction, but because the silence was finally broken. And yet, as she prepared for the first night of Unmuted, walking onto a bare,